It wasn't the oldest zoo in the world. The ancient Egyptians have dibs on that because, of course, they do. It wasn't even the oldest zoo in Europe. The Tiergarten Schönbrunn in Vienna has those bragging rights. But when it opened in 1836, the Bristol Zoological Gardens in Great Britain was a marvel.
It is impossible to contemplate the triumph of art, industry, and public spirit exhibited in the wondrous transformation of a rude field into a beautiful garden.
Over the years, the Bristol Zoo, though small by modern standards, racked up both visitors and victories in animal conservation, including Britain's first birth in captivity of the black rhinoceros. Although many of its charming Victorian buildings were never quite right for the animals they housed, it took nearly 2 centuries for the Bristol Zoo to finally close its gates forever. It was September 2022, just 2 years after the global COVID pandemic caused the number of visitors to the zoo to plunge to the point it became impossible to remain in business, which meant moving more than 25,000 animals. With the new Bristol Zoo focusing on conservation, many species were permanently relocated, like penguins and meerkats who found new homes in Spain and the United States. But there was one group, one species, that was incredibly difficult to move. The 8 western lowland gorillas who called the Bristol Zoological Gardens home. Sensitive, intelligent, and social, these animals couldn't simply be hustled into a padded van like they did with the flamingos or tucked into custom wooden crates like the Aldabra giant tortoises. Moving the gorillas was much more complicated. So much so that a decision was made. Would it not be better to build their new habitat first and then relocate them? And so, those 8 gorillas stayed behind, where they remain today, 3 years later, in a closed, otherwise empty zoo.
And they got a small beam of light against the mirror.
Truly weird stuff.
8 gorillas living in their habitat in an empty zoo for years. It was something the public wasn't even aware of until an urban explorer, that's what we call people who wander abandoned buildings and places, broke into the shuttered Bristol Zoo and stumbled across them. A video made its way to the internet showing one of the gorillas tapping on the glass window of its enclosure, looking, the explorer said, desperately sad. The British press leapt on the story, calling the Bristol 8 the world's loneliest gorillas. Lots of folks jumped to the conclusion that the great apes had been abandoned and forgotten. No, not the case at all, said the zoo's director, Sarah Gedman. First of all, the gorillas are as cared for in their old habitat as they will be in their new one, which will be 4 times larger, she said. Also, gorillas are not like people. A gorilla smile is a show of aggression, okay? And that's not even getting into how gorillas don't express their feelings through facial expressions anyway. Gorillas use body language and posture and action to convey what they're feeling. And also, they are perfectly happy to not be observed by crowds of people because they're gorillas, not stand-up comedians. They don't need an audience. They're fine. And please stop breaking into the property because you're just scaring them. Now we have to lock them up at night for their own safety. You don't think of a zoo just closing. If anything seems kind of permanent, it's a zoo. You can't just shut it down and start rehoming the lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. But zoos do close. And so do other places that house Earth's wild things, places that go by other names, like marine parks, game farms, and sanctuaries. With more than 10,000 zoos worldwide housing millions of wild animals, it just stands to reason that some will shut down. When you do hear of a zoo closing, though, it's often a small roadside sort of facility. Remember Joe Exotic?
Tell all the hunters to lay down their guns. Tell them that the tiger needs a little bit of love. Let them run the jungle. Let them roam their land. Then stand back and marvel, what a beautiful cat. 'Cause I saw a tiger, now I understand. I saw a tiger, and the tiger saw me.
That's Joe Exotic himself singing, I Saw a Tiger. Of course, it's been a minute since Joe laid eyes on a tiger. What with that 21-year prison sentence he's serving for a murder-for-hire plot against his big cat rival and sworn enemy, Carol Baskin. 7 months after Joe checked into his cell in federal prison, the U.S. Department of Agriculture suspended the license of the zoo where Joe had kept and mistreated hundreds of tigers and other animals for more than 20 years. We're talking emaciated animals, big cats that had simply gone missing with no record of how or where. The menu was spoiled meat. During one USDA inspection, a lion cub was found in such critical condition that inspectors stopped immediately to get the cub into veterinary care. Roadside zoos can be the worst news for the animals in captivity, and not much better news for the public. There was at least one incident at Joe Exotic's place where a young lion escaped in full view of an audience. Oops. To be fair, though, animals bust out of roadside zoos and commercial zoos far more often than anyone would be cool with.
An escaped monkey is on the loose north of Charlotte in North Carolina. Little capuchin monkey here climbing on the telephone lines. Apparently escaped from a local zoo yesterday. The zoo is now working with local animal services to try to, there he goes, get him and bring him back.
The Audubon Zoo spent the past 2 days conducting a thorough investigation into how the jaguar escaped and how to prevent this sort of thing from happening again. And zoo officials now admit had staff members not acted as quickly as they did, the jaguar could have breached a perimeter fence here at the zoo and gotten loose in uptown New Orleans.
Set free in an Ohio neighborhood, and tonight they are not all rounded up. Good evening, I'm Wendy Bell.
And I'm Mike Clark. Channel 4 Action News reporter Shannon Perrine live tonight where one monkey is still out there, Shannon, and running around with a dangerous virus.
That's right, Mike. The rain is really coming down right now, but authorities here in Zanesville, Ohio, really want to find that monkey because he carries a virus that can be very dangerous to a human being if he comes in contact with a human being. We want to tell you that just up the road here, just through these woods where the animals were all roaming last night, 48 of them have already been buried on the Thompson property. Think about it, 300-pound grizzly bears running through these neighborhoods. One large cat, we understand, was hit by a car in traffic. They were all let loose by their owner just before he killed himself.
That was a shocking, tragic story out of Ohio in 2011. Another Buckeye State Zoo escape in 2024 was a whole lot more tame.
Cedar Point Amusement Park in Ohio became the scene of another great escape over the weekend when a large herd of goats broke free from their pen at the petting zoo.
And you may remember this was the same park where a couple of camels were spotted taking a stroll last week, so there's a pattern here. This time, park officials say the goats jumped over the barriers of the enclosure and started roaming free.
The goats started following folks around and seemed a little confused about where to go. The human visitors, well, they seemed to take it all in stride. No one butted heads. The whole experience turned out not to be too bad after all.
800 pounds and on the run. This is the big talker today. An animal gets loose at Roger Williams Park Zoo.
And bruises workers on his way out. Tonight, it's back in its cage, but ran free for almost an hour. NBC 10's Michelle San Miguel was at the zoo and found out how it escaped. Michelle?
Well, Patrice and Dan, that animal that escaped is called a takin. It's a mix between a goat and an antelope. As you can see, it has some pretty impressive horns. Well, this talking injured 2 workers before charging out of its
To begin with the Fox News alert, a story we are following all morning. Panic breaking out at a zoo after 2 lions escaped. This all unfolding in Germany. 2 male lions somehow slipped out of their cages overnight and are somewhere on the zoo grounds. They say an emergency plan is now in place. The zoo will be closed to the public until the 1-year-old
chase caught on camera. A chimpanzee escaping from a zoo in Japan and trying to avoid capture as authorities scramble to get him back safely. At one point, he's even swinging from utility lines as the drama went on for 2 hours. We get the tale of the tape from NBC's Miguel Almaguer.
The high-wire drama was carried live on Japanese TV. The escaped chimpanzee named Cha-Cha fled a zoo in northern Japan and showed no interest in going back. The 24-year-old male perched above and swinging across electrical lines. Reporters calling the play-by-play live for nearly 2 hours. He just got hit, one yelled, after a tranquilizer
escaped an enclosure at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. The female Mexican gray wolf scaled the containment wall and created a gap in the top of the enclosure. The Cleveland Metro Park Zoo is working on modifications to prevent a breach in the future.
We could go on, and that's the uneasy truth. The prosperity of post-World War II America. We're all still a little drunk on that nostalgia, or maybe hungover from it is more accurate. We're all walking around bleary-eyed and queasy, pissed off that the party feels like it's over before we even had a chance to have a good time. But those post-war Americans, your grandparents or maybe great-grandparents, they were just in time for automobile culture to explode, for the dawn of the white picket fence suburban dream. This was a newly mobile society, and just about everything changed to fit it. From the songs being played on the radio to the boom in roadside motels and roadside attractions, the automobile radically changed the way American families lived and worked and played. Now families had the means and the opportunity to hit the road, and roadside zoos began springing up all over the country. Though a few were already in place, like the legendary Bear Den on US 27 in Harrison, Michigan. Its proprietor, a gentleman named John Spikehorn Myers, opened up for business in the 1930s. Spikehorn was a vision in buckskin, and his property was as rustic as you could get. He had a log cabin, a few sheds, and a handful of pens. Bears were Spikehorn's thing, black bears that he raised from cubs. There were no cages at the Bear Den. Visitors wandered freely among the bears, feeding them popcorn and orange soda in glass bottles. There was a huge sign at the entrance to the park that read, "Only bear den in the world where visitors are allowed to shake hands with a bear." And it was true. Spikehorn had taught his bears to offer their paw for a shake. It mostly went well. There were the occasional bear bites and bear scratches and even a little girl who got dragged through a fence by an overenthusiastic bear. But people took that in stride. They seemed to understand that the risk of being mauled was all part of the authentic Bear Den experience. In 1953, the Michigan Federation of Humane Societies took a swing at outlawing roadside zoos like the Bear Den. A swing and a miss. It took until 2012 for a law regulating the possession and exhibition of wild and exotic animals to be enacted in the state. And all through those many decades, roadside zoos in Michigan kept on keeping on. Sometimes, roadside zoos were an attraction all in themselves, but it was common to find a free zoo attached to a service station. Even as early as 1951, plenty of these zoos were more than a little bit tragic. The money went into the signs designed to lure drivers off the highway, pull off the road expecting an exotic wild kingdom, only to park in front of a dusty eyesore with maybe a sickly monkey or two, a bedraggled coyote, and depending on where in the country you found yourself, possibly a listless and scabby-looking alligator. These were usually small mom-and-pop establishments, and it's almost comically unhinged how casually these zoos were run, like this one in Fargo, North Dakota.
Mrs. Margaret Rock collects bears like people collect stray cats and dogs. She also can't resist taking in monkeys, crows, coyotes, and other assorted animals. She has 6 bears and cooks them a pan of cornmeal mush every morning. The rest of the day, she feeds them root beer.
Then there was Bob Lehman's outfit in Canutillo, Texas. Lehman owned a business right on Highway 80 called the Chicago Service Station. Lehman was an animal lover, so opening a free zoo to draw drivers to his pumps felt like a no-brainer. It was 1950, and the future was as bright as the steel bars on Lehman's spotless cages.
For variety and quantity, Lehman's got them all beat. His attractions include 4 lions, 3 of which are full-grown females averaging 375 pounds in weight. The 4th lion almost crowds out his elders in the race for popularity, however, because he is only 3 weeks old and shares his quarters in the service station show window with Sir Sidney, a 1-year-old chimpanzee.
Lehman Zoo also had raccoons and possums, bobcats and black squirrels, a chatty raven named Pablo, and a laid-back baboon named Marge. Lehman cared for the animals himself, with the exception of the lion cub, who was apparently mostly looked after by Sir Sidney the chimp. Sometimes, when we tell a story like this one, it seems like we're talking about not just another time, but another planet. Who buys a baby lion from a traveling circus, bottle feeds it, and then gives it over to a chimpanzee nanny? Bob Lehman, that's who. He had 0 training and 0 experience running a zoo, but he was a quick learner. Until the lion cub, Freddie, the lionesses, Tommy, Cleo, and Peggy, all lived in the Lehman family home. Pablo the raven had a habit of stealing pencils, so when the lions went to live at the gas station, he joined them, leaving the cub and Sir Sidney to share the house with Bob, his wife, their 2-year-old son, and their baby daughter, Susan Marie. Lehman told the El Paso Times that everyone got along beautifully, except when the baby tried to run Sir Sidney over with a toy car. Lehman said the chimp would lecture the child in monkey language, then retreat to the couch to keep a benevolent eye on her.
Many roadside zoos charge admission prices, but not Lehman. He has a box mounted in an inconspicuous place where visitors can deposit coins to help take care of the feed bill.
Which was no small thing. The 3 adult lions ate 25 pounds of horse meat every other day and a gallon of raw milk with a bowl full of raw eggs once a week. The other animals ate piles of bread, carrots, apples, bananas, lettuce, and any other fruits and vegetables Lehman could lay his hands on. It sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, but Lehman's menagerie never had a single instance of sickness. These animals were well cared for, and while Lehman acknowledged that they attracted a whole lot of vehicles to his service station, he was so attached to them that he'd keep them, even if they didn't. But people like Lehman and roadside zoos like his weren't exactly the norm, and not every operator had a motive as innocent as selling gasoline and souvenirs. In Florida, the State Game and Freshwater Fish Commission had its hands full busting roadside zoos that were operating as fronts for illegal gambling. In 1950, Cecil Webb, the state game commissioner, announced that all roadside zoos in the Sunshine State would be required to have permits for the display of wild animals. Failure to do so meant fines, closures, and even prison time. Webb wasn't playing. He announced his intention to personally go anywhere in the state of Florida where animals were being used to lure tourists into what he called
a vicious racket fleecing visitors of thousands of dollars during the season. The typical roadside zoo has a wild animal exhibit out front and a gambling room in the rear, usually containing either dice, roulette wheels, shell games, or a combination. In some cases, visitors have reported losses as high as $1,000.
Florida wasn't unique when it came to roadside zoos operating as illegal gambling establishments. Idaho, Washington, Montana, Georgia, Illinois, the Carolinas, Texas, Arizona, California, basically any state attractive to tourists, had the same problem. Even ultra-virtuous Utah had busted a couple of zoo operators for preying on visitors with a weakness for cards and dice. Some of you might be wondering if illegal gambling was, in fact, the biggest hazard these zoos posed. What about the animals? Not just their well-being, but the risk of escape. Surely someone somewhere stopped to consider what might happen if a lion or a tiger or a root beer crazed bear slipped the bars to wander free, or just decided one fine afternoon that they'd had enough of being held captive.
"Shine your flashlights here," the boys shouted through the almost pitch blackness. Police obliged. "It's the thing!" someone exclaimed. Then, with a terrified chattering, a furry anima darted onto the pavement, only to be enfolded in a skillfully cast blanket.
It wasn't the thing. It was an escaped kinkajou from Texas Jim Mitchell's reptile farm. Texas Jim had failed to mention that he was missing an animal. Why borrow trouble? Why pay a fine for a little fruit-eating honey bear that wouldn't hurt a person? Probably not. Heck, a full-grown kinkajou tops out at maybe 7 pounds. So what's all the fuss? Well, the fuss was stories like this.
A caged bear at the roadside zoo in Manistee, Michigan, chewed up an attendant from head to foot. Richard McBurney, 62, was bitten on the head, chest, shoulder, abdomen, arms, and legs. His condition was described today as fair. McBurney, a part-time employee of the zoo, was attacked when he opened the cage to give the animal water.
McBurney survived only because the owner of a nearby tavern heard the commotion and rushed to help, battering the bear with a shovel until it backed away from McBurney. Then you had guys like Richard Cummings of Marysville, Washington. He had a little zoo operation, but apparently very little self-control or sense.
A roadside zoo operator was arrested Wednesday night by 2 state patrolmen who said he chased them with a 6-foot rattlesnake.
Cummings was also drunk, surprise, and resisted arrest. The whole rattler showdown only ended when Cummings, too winded by the chase, stopped and dropped the snake back into its pit. Even Las Vegas, that glittering desert mecca of debauchery, a place you wouldn't think would need to do much of anything beyond just existing to lure a tourist. Even Vegas couldn't resist an animal attraction. Then Nevada passed a state law designed to wipe out the dusty desert bunco games that relied on rattlesnakes and raccoons as bait for hopeful gamblers, only to run straight into battle with the owner of the multi-million-dollar Sparks Nugget Casino. The owner, John Esquaga, was offended that anyone would call his business a roadside zoo.
Little Bertha, the nugget elephant, is responsible. She is used for commercial purposes. She is an exotic animal, ergo, she is illegal. There are not many people locally who keep an elephant around the house. Therefore, Bertha is exotic. She also dances a particularly wicked little dance and is a female. Under a different definition of the term, this too makes her exotic.
Party horror, a little Vegas stripper humor for you there. And the thing is, no one, not even Fish and Game, seemed to have much appetite for banishing Bertha. They actually pushed for a bill that would carve out an exemption for animals like Bertha.
It is not every community which has a pachyderm available at a moment's notice, and it would be a shame to spoil the whole show on a technicality.
One more thing.
Elephant haters are finks.
In 1958, a Florida congressman named Sid Herlong took a look at the state's motley collection of roadside animal attractions and then introduced legislation to at least ban the import of the venomous cobra snake and its eggs.
The congressman pointed out that roadside zoos and snake houses that have uncoiled along major roads and vacation areas are making hooded cobras their main attraction. A cobra just kills for the hell of it, said Herlong. Not even Congress can pass a law that will keep snakes from breeding once they escape to the woods.
When skeptics questioned Herlong as to the odds of a cobra escaping, he pointed out that a rhinoceros had recently escaped a roadside zoo in his district. If a rhino could do it, surely a cobra could. It just seemed like common sense to Herlong. He was later proven right by another invasive species of snake. Starting in the 1990s, the Burmese python was spotted for the first time in the Florida Everglades. By the year 2000, they were declared a reproducing species. In 2012, the U.S. Department of the Interior banned the importing of Burmese pythons. Sid Herlong died in 1995, living just long enough to say,
I told you so.
Just a few years after Congressman Herlong came for the cobra, a 22-foot-long python came for its keeper at a roadside zoo in Gibsonton, Florida.
Alfred Henley, 59, was found unconscious on the ground near the python's cage. The 210-pound snake was found later in a tree.
Okay, a 210-pound snake? Yikes.
Henley died en route to a hospital in nearby Tampa. Sheriff's Deputy Norman Bedingfield said an autopsy would be held, but added,
"We're going on the theory that the snake crushed him. Now, that's what all these circus people believe, and we have no reason to doubt them."
Then, the dead man's widow capped off this wannabe Coen Brothers movie by announcing that it surely was a puzzle, since the snake had never killed anyone before. First time for everything, as they say, and the last time for anything, for Mr. Alfred Henley. The public was pretty chill about owners of roadside zoos being slapped, strangled, bitten, kicked, scratched, and bruised. But when those things happen to guests, especially children. In November 1967, a black bear attacked a 4-year-old girl at a roadside zoo in Centerville, Maryland.
The bear attempted to pull the girl under the bars and into his cage outside a restaurant on Highway 301. 3 school teachers and a volunteer firefighter eating at the restaurant punched the bear with iron fence posts for several minutes.
The cage was enclosed by a 4-foot-high fence, but David Horton, the zoo's owner, had left the gate open while he went to get more food for the bear, who was in the middle of a feeding. The zoo was open for business, and there were no signs indicating that visitors couldn't enter that enclosure. The child and her uncle approached the cage, stopping to purchase some food from a coin-operated machine. The bear managed to reach out a paw, snag the child's foot. The bear dragged the girl into the cage up to her waist, tearing her pants off in the process. It was her screaming that brought those 4 Good Samaritans running from the restaurant toward the bear's cage.
Herlock, the firefighter, later said, "I lost all sense of fear." He reached into the cage, grabbed the bear by the ears, trying to lift his head off of the girl.
But the more they pulled, the harder the bear tugged. They finally succeeded in beating the bear back, and it's kind of miraculous that that child had only bruises and a few puncture wounds on her legs. Or maybe not so miraculous, because that bear, like many of its kind at those janky little zoos, had had all of his teeth removed, except for the molars. A 5-year-old girl was bitten by a wolf at a roadside zoo in Fulton County, Illinois. A pair of full-grown male lions escaped their roadside captivity at House Kitchen in Augusta, Georgia. No children harmed, but some nearby sheep and dogs were attacked and killed. In Michigan, a hippopotamus wandered away from its roadside enclosure, wandered straight into traffic, where it gave the handful of Michigan drivers who hit it the shock and scare of a lifetime. And even the granddad of Florida Man showed up with a roadside zoo adventure of his very own.
Dade County Deputy Neil Lett arrived to find raccoons, pigs, monkeys, ducks, geese, and baboons rushing about. Lett said Joseph Tessier, 25, was smashing cages, telling him, "I'm saving us from the animals."
Tessier was arrested and charged with malicious destruction of private property. As for the zoo's owner, Tommy Dale, He took it in stride. That's show business, he said. That's Florida. This was right around the time that public opinion regarding the conditions at roadside zoos began to shift. Where it had once been a novelty to pull the family station wagon off the highway for the thrill of seeing a tiger or a chimpanzee, now the shabbiness was on display. The cages, many of them pitifully small or shockingly inadequate in terms of security. Where it was once exciting to just lay eyes on a lion or a coyote, now people couldn't help but see just how mangy, depleted, and sorrowful many of the animals looked. Patchy fur, eyes crusted and leaking, elephants chained in stalls not much bigger than they were. Big cats restlessly pacing, marking off their choked territory. The primates, so intelligent and so social, listlessly plucking at their own flesh. In 1969, only 15 states had laws on their books that even attempted to regulate the roadside zoo industry.
Unfortunately, the care of these animals is, as a rule, deplorable. Cages are sometimes too small for the animals to stand, or the bottom of the cages are made of wire which cuts their feet. Often the cages need cleaning, and sometimes the animals have fouled themselves because of the cramped space. The owners, busy with dispensing gas or food or selling souvenirs, sometimes forget to water the animals or leave them to suffer in the hot sun.
Now people were comparing the roadside zoos with the big regulated zoos and discovering that the differences were far greater than merely the size of the space or the variety of the animals housed there. It was increasingly clear that animals in regulated zoos enjoyed sanitary and humane conditions, not to mention at least a semblance of their natural environment. It was a stark contrast to the roadside zoos, which were primitive at best.
Animals in cages, beasts languishing in the dark corners of pits, chained to trees and laughed at. They lie in fear in corners of ill-conceived pens, trembling and alone in a world they will never understand. Often missed and mistreated, a silent suffering only they will ever know. One man in North Georgia was keeping a bobcat in a little cage for tourists and was feeding it nothing but raccoons. It was in bad shape.
Another Georgia man in DeKalb County had 5 baboons in a cage in his backyard. Then he left his wife and left the baboons, who remained outdoors all that winter. They nearly starved, and most lost nearly all their fingers to frostbite. Secretary of the Interior Stuart Udall stepped in, drafting a model law to improve the treatment of animals that were held in roadside zoos.
I am deeply disturbed by this situation. In this great country, where we have always demonstrated concern for the welfare of wild animals, such treatment must not be tolerated.
The feds could only do so much, though, since the states had primary responsibility. All Udall could do was encourage states to adopt uniform statutes regulating the care of wild animals in captivity.
Many citizens and organizations have expressed outrage about conditions at many commercial roadside zoos, menageries, and snake pits. Complaints also concern the condition of wild animal exhibits at many filling stations, souvenir shops, refreshment stands, and other businesses catering to tourists.
The most frequent complaints?
Cruelty, cramped quarters, shocking sanitary conditions at some exhibits where the filth was not only repugnant to the viewer, but a public health hazard as well. Larger animals are sometimes chained and even tormented to make them appear ferocious.
The model law drafted by the Department of the Interior included recommended minimal standards for wildlife exhibitors, feeding schedules, cage sizes, and other specifications. But, as the outdoor editor for the Atlanta Journal, Priyat Veselan, pointed out,
laws can't touch the soul of a man. They can't draw out a man's compassion. That has to come from within.
People hate the government until they want the government to do something about an issue that matters to them. And the conundrum of the roadside zoo is about as good an example of that as any. The federal government did pass something called the Animal Welfare Act way back in 1965. On paper, it looked good. The AWA established standards of care for animal housing, sanitation, nutrition, water, even veterinary care. Under the AWA, exhibitors were mandated to provide their animals protection from extreme weather and extreme temperatures. A model law, as such things are called. A model for states to follow. Or not, because this is the US of A, and we don't like being told what to do by nobody know-how. So the AWA was just one part of the reality for operators of roadside zoos. State and local law added layers and layers of their own regulation, licensing, and even zoning. So many laws, so many ordinances, so many rules. And as is the case sometimes when stuff gets left up to the states to decide, things can get chaotic. Faced with a bewildering tangle of red tape, some roadside zookeepers just said, screw it, we'll just be unlawful or whatever and take a gamble on not getting caught. Animal welfare activists were disgusted by what they considered lax and barely enforced federal regulations. They howled and fought and protested for decades, with the general public mostly blissfully indifferent, or let's be charitable and say unaware. That all changed on March 20th, 2020, with the debut of the Netflix documentary series, Tiger King. Within 10 days of the release, more than 34 million people were suddenly very interested in how a roadside zoo was run and how those animals were being treated.
You know, I've never seen the show, okay, so I just have to go by what people have told me and some of the comments that I get on social media. And that is, I have never in my life, even now, been accused or charged of animal cruelty or animal abuse by any law enforcement agency other than PETA. Okay, I'm not in here for animal abuse. I'm in here for taking five endangered species without a permit. They claimed I should have had a permit to euthanize my 5 sick tigers.
That's the man himself, Joseph Maldonado, a.k.a. Joe Exotic, speaking from jail. When asked, he said that the first thing he planned to do upon being released was head to the nearest 7-Eleven for a pack of Marlboro Lights. Then, irony of ironies, he intended to speak on the cruelty and injustice of the confined, as in himself mostly.
My long-term goal is to testify in front of Congress about prison and justice reform.
We don't need to retell the story of Joe Exotic. But honestly, we probably have him, or at least that Netflix documentary, to thank for a dramatic increase in awareness and concern for the animals still on display at roadside attractions, even today. Driving through Florida just last summer for a work trip, we pulled into a gas station that had a giant sign advertising a free alligator exhibit. The alligators were indoors under fluorescent lights. They were small and sort of dried out looking. Their gaze was as flat and dead-eyed as any gator you might spot in the wild. But the enclosure these gators called home was sandwiched between boxes of coconut patties and tie-dyed t-shirts, all the way in the back of the store, as far from any natural light as you could get. It was a pretty tragic-looking setup, too dismal to even be campy. I watched as a family approached, and the kids recoiled. They clearly knew without having to be told that this was no place for an alligator of any size. It was all over their little faces. We began with the story of the Bristol 8, the gorillas left behind at the Bristol Zoological Gardens in the UK. Those gorillas have been promised a happy ending and a new home, and now the world is watching to see if that promise is kept. Just a few months ago, in August 2025, another heartbreaking story of abandoned animals came to light. American photojournalist Seth Lawless, who who has well over 500,000 followers across multiple social platforms and is famous for documenting abandoned places. He posted a video shot by drone inside a closed and defunct marine park in France. The clip is haunting. When Lawless posted it on October 26, 2025, he added this caption.
The mother orca appears dead, her body floating motionless in murky water beside her son. But this wasn't the ocean. These whales were left behind inside a closed, defunct marine park in France. This was all that remained when the crowds disappeared and the park closed forever. But then, she moved, looking straight up at my drone, curious, gentle, almost relieved. After all this time, they weren't alone anymore. It was as if they recognized me, as if hope itself had come back to visit. And what happened next was heartbreaking and beautiful. The two began to perform, as if remembering what it meant to be seen. They started to move, slowly at first, and then with joy, leaping, twirling, performing the only language they were ever taught. But this time, there was no crowd, just me and their longing to be free. Their bodies cut through the still water like memories coming back to life, spinning, rising, falling, as if the ghosts of applause still echoed somewhere in their minds. They still have hope, and their story isn't over unless we let it. To the 55 million people who share my posts, our voices have already sent waves crashing against the French government. Since my videos have gone viral, the French government has publicly said they're now fully engaged. This is the moment we push even harder. Please share their voices with the entire world.
The two orcas, Tiwiki, who's 23, and her son Keijo, 11, were floating in the stagnant waters of the abandoned marine land of Antibes. This park was once one of Europe's biggest marine attractions, but it was closed earlier this year following a new French animal welfare law banning orca performances. Oh, the irony, right? Save the orcas from performing, only to leave them all alone in an empty park. That video went viral, and Seth Lawless was in trouble for trespassing, breaking the law. The French authorities want to arrest him, but so far haven't yet formally asked that he be extradited to France, which makes you think that maybe it's all sound and fury, because by making Seth Lawless, not his real name by the way, into a criminal, they can distract you from the wrenching and devastating truth that these two incredibly intelligent mammals have been left behind. And before you go, yeah, but they don't know any different, they're just fish. No, they're not fish. They're mammals, like you. They're apex predators with complex social relationships and even unique vocalizations that they pass from one generation to the next. They have great eyesight, great hearing. They form pods and clans and have demonstrated behaviors that look an awful lot like friendship. They're alive and they're aware. And even if they were just fish, they still wouldn't deserve the fate that Wilkie and Keijo have been condemned to, any more than Seth Lawless deserves to be prosecuted for sharing their fate with the world. People are so terrible and so wonderful, and often both at the same time. You really see that in the way we treat animals, the way we forget that we're animals too, the way we have to learn over and over that sometimes the only path to the right thing is through a whole wilderness of the wrong things. Like Seth Lawless breaking into marine land of Antibes, like Joe Exotic capturing the attention of a pandemic-stunned world. The eye-popping, bleached-out, mullet spectacle that is the Tiger King gave us all something to talk about, and it awakened a whole new generation to the truth of just what goes on at those goofy animal attractions conveniently located off the bypass. Take us out, Joe.
You could save the weak and heal the lame, the wild beast. You can make it tame. Just let your light come shining through. All this and more your love can do. Well, I once was chained, but now I'm free. I found the cure. Well, I found the key. I gave my hand to those in need. All this and more your love can do.
Next time on True Weird Stuff, no one heard the phantom coming. No one saw the phantom's face. And no one ever forgot the terror of those months. Months when movies played to empty theaters, city streets were deserted, porch lights blazed all night long as residents cowered behind locked doors. 8 people attacked. 5 people slaughtered. Who was the Phantom? Find out on the next True Weird Stuff.
Special thanks to our voice talents on this episode: Aaron Cox, Sam Moore, Carrie Doc Bowser, Lamar Richardson, and introducing Jeff Davis. When I heard you were doing this story, I was able to recall the time as a child that our family drove cross country. So we drove from east to west. Well, we drove west to east to come home, too. But I remember this when we started getting in some areas that were kind of desolate, that there were these souvenir places and gas stations that had animals. Now, we never stopped, but I remembered the big one was buffalo, because at that time, buffalo were really buffalo bison. Somebody could correct me on this anyhow. But I remember they were severely endangered at that point. That has since gotten better. But all these places had buffalo. Come see the buffalo, because that was kind of an exotic thing. And I remembered those places, and I was able, in my mind's eye, to be able to see those places on the side of the road with hand-painted signs for miles ahead of time. See the buffalo, until you got to the gas station or the souvenir place. And
it really was a wild time, wasn't it?
It really was. I am such an animal lover, and it breaks my heart to hear all of this and how these animals were mistreated. You know, what's the one thing that they say about a lot of people that are serial killers? It's how they treated animals as a child, and the fact that they had no empathy for them. And here you are, these people running these gambling houses and roadside stands that are treating animals in very much the same way.
I tried really hard to not linger lovingly on descriptions of atrocities committed to these animals, because that's a choice that you can make, but it's a hard choice to listen to, don't you think? I mean, isn't it enough that we had the guy in DeKalb, Georgia, leave his wife and his baboons to starve in his backyard? And that wasn't that long ago. And I just have to say, what in the ever-loving, what are we thinking? If you know that your neighbor has 8 baboons in a shed in the backyard, I mean, this is not 200 years ago, folks. This is like the 70s.
And of course, the thing is, there was, as people say when they talk about the pandemic, there was the Joe Exotic part of the pandemic, which was right at the very beginning when we were all fascinated and horrified by what had been going on with this man.
The Joe Exotic thing, it gave people something in common that wasn't the virus in the beginning of the COVID pandemic. it also did, I have to say, the universe is constantly seeking balance. All this awful stuff, this good stuff, this ugliness, this beauty. The Joe Exotic documentary on Netflix, I think would have been a hit under any circumstances. But the timing of it really was a huge difference maker in how people are now thinking about these roadside animal attractions and how these animals are now being protected. People are paying much more attention now that the Joe Exotic thing came out and showed people just because you have these animals doesn't mean you're caring properly for these animals. And you give the people of the past, we're constantly giving them the past gets a pass a little bit because folks didn't know any better. It's hard for us with our 2025 brains to think that feeding bears a steady diet of cornmeal mush and root beer is a strategy that makes sense for the bear. I mean, there's like very little nutrition in cornmeal mush and root beer, right?
Right.
But that was what was happening. And you had these sugar addicted bears. Some of them, this one lady's bears were on the root beer drip. You had other bears that were hooked on orange Fanta. I mean, it was just crazy. And these animals, if they were sick or injured, most of the time they didn't get care.
Because
allowed to suffer and die.
A lot of those exotic animals, that's a specialty of veterinary medicine. And for a lot of these places, I'm sure there was no one around that had any expertise in dealing with the health concerns of some of these animals. Even alligators, which it's hard to be too cuddly about alligators, but still, you don't want to see any animal mistreated anywhere. I don't care how vile they are, even snakes and whatnot, because it's not fair to the animal. But Sherry, the gorilla story that you told, that you led into and then came back to at the end, it was heartbreaking. And I think that after we did the episode Gorillas in the Myth a couple weeks ago, I've had a new understanding of gorillas. I sort of accepted that they were around, but to just listen to what had happened to them really was sad. Yeah. And even though they said, well, they weren't really abandoned, but they were. And the orca story, oh my God. Oh my God, the orca story.
Yeah, the 8 gorillas that were left behind at the Bristol Zoological Garden. So you have to decide which side you're going to sit on. Are you going to sit with the zoo's director who said, listen, these animals will be moving to their new habitat. They are fine where they are. They are being cared for. They're having a break from being stared at. They're having a little respite from being a spectacle. And stop picking the lock and scaring them, because as a result of the break-ins, they now put the gorillas indoors there at night, whereas before they were leaving the gates open and the gorillas could go from the indoor part of their enclosure to the outdoor as they chose 24/7. And now the gorillas are on nighttime lockdown. So that's what the zoo is saying. They're going, this is not what you say it is. And you're actually making it worse for them. And then there's what the people who broke into the Bristol Garden say, which is these gorillas were abandoned and they're tapping on the glass to get our attention because they're sad. As you heard in this episode, gorillas in zoos, these are very intelligent, very sensitive animals. Gorillas in zoos have done wonderful things, like children who've fallen into enclosures have been lifted up and protected by gorillas. But they've also done things that demonstrate their agitation. They've charged the glass at enclosures and have put on threatening displays in response to being taunted and jeered at and teased. So, pick your poison. But I hear what the zoo director is saying at Bristol, which is they are not suffering. They suffer more when you come see them than they're suffering right now. I don't know where you come down on that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, that's a very difficult situation because, we learned about gorillas that They're not easy to transport. They're very strong. It would be very difficult to know what to do in that situation. So I suppose you could, and I don't know that I'm necessarily in this camp, but it's like you shouldn't be putting them in zoos at all. And that way you wouldn't have this problem,
And even as we say that, we recognize that zoos are critical to the conservation of a species like the gorilla because there are so few of them left in the world. The thing with the Bristol 8, so because gorillas live in social groups, and those 8 gorillas, they have a clear social order. They have to sedate all of the animals and move them all at once. And wherever they took them, this was the zoo's position. Wherever we moved them would be temporary, and we'd have to move them again. And the stress that it places on these animals is just incalculable. Mm-hmm. So the decision was made, let's move them once. And when they go to their new enclosure, it's going to be in a zoo setting that is more familiar, I think, to American kids now than the Victorian zoo model. And I hear people complain who go to like big, wide open zoos, like the North Carolina Zoo. They're like, oh, the elephants are so far away. You can't even see the rhinoceros. Where's the giraffe? Well, those animals who live at that zoo, those zookeepers are trying to replicate their natural conditions more closely than putting them in a house, a charming little Victorian house. Like, why did no one understand that the giraffe is very tall? It's going to need taller ceilings. It's little things like this that go back to when in the case of the Bristol Zoo, when it was built and opened in the 1800s, people had a different understanding completely about animals and what they needed. And again, when you hear that the Animal Welfare Act wasn't even a thing until the 1960s, like 100+ years after these zoos were built, like be real. Like we have to acknowledge that we weren't perfect in the past. And, there's an effort being made now to be better. Is it perfect? No. Would it be amazing if all of the animals could live in their habitats and not be in cages? That'd be the shizzle. But the reality is we're encroaching on, like in the gorillas case, we are encroaching on their habitat. They're running out of places to live. And we're not only encroaching, we're poaching. And we're eating them. We're selling their flesh as bushmeat. We're whacking off their hands as souvenirs. We're killing them sometimes because a rich hunter has come in and paid us to lead them to a gorilla so that hunter can get a trophy. So when you're up against that, you go, well, a properly run zoo with a proper conservation program is not the worst thing ever.
I guess the thought that I had when I was listening to you do this story is that there are certain animals where I live. I mean, I couldn't keep a lion in my apartment.
Oh, no.
Mojo wouldn't be pleased about it, but I couldn't keep a lion in my apartment because they have zoning laws, and I'm surprised that zoning laws are not the thing that could shut this down. I mean,
well, zoning is one of the few tools that local governments, municipal or state, what have you, it's one of the few things they have that is meaningful, because it can be hard to get people to give a damn when we're talking about, well, what about this chimpanzee's welfare, right? It can be harder than you want to think to get people to care. But as soon as you get into zoning, you can these places have been able to make a pretty good argument for why these attractions shouldn't be permitted. And if you think about how many things in your newsfeed just over the past years have sort of all those threads come together in this story. You've been hearing about the invasive Burmese python in the Everglades, right?
Right.
And going back to the 70s, when they were trying to keep venomous cobras from being released into the wild. Think about a world where there's cobras potentially in the Everglades. It's crazy. It's crazy.
like I said, I'm very big-hearted about animals, and I don't want to see any animal suffer. I can't even watch the sad animal video.
Sarah McLachlan.
Sarah McLachlan. Poor Sarah McLachlan. She's just not even doing it anymore, and she'll be forever connected to it. I can't even watch those because it's too heartbreaking. And to just think that any animal is being mistreated, anything is being mistreated anywhere, it's so heartbreaking and sad for me. It really, I mean, that was the thing about this story.
That was the thing for me too. It was part of what made me do this one is when I was working on Gorillas in the Myth, not surprisingly, the Bristol 8, those 8 quote unquote abandoned, I'm not sure that's the right word, those left behind gorillas, I thought a lot about them, and I didn't put them in that episode because I thought, I suspect there's more to this story. And I began doing a little digging, and some of what you come across, like back in the 20s and 30s, man, people were crazy. You'd have some guy, you'd have some bearded loner out there in the heartland who's like, let me tell you what I like. I like me a bobcat. We'll go collect them. And now he's living with bobcats, and now he's started charging people a few bucks to come look at them. It was that sort of like, whatever, kind of a frontier vibe.
And I think that you had mentioned this in the story. This sort of coincided with us being more mobile as a country because of automobiles, and then roads got better too. And so there were more opportunities for people to try to make money by having whatever exotic animal at their place of business.
Well, that was kind of like the fun Easter egg for me in this because, as Americans, we have car culture running in our veins. Like we don't even comprehend the ways that geography shape our American identity. Our country is so damn big that we can have something called car culture. Mm-hmm. You get into a country like Denmark, they do not have car culture. You know what I mean? Like you can jog from one end to the next. Like they don't have these long, empty expanses of interstate unfolding like asphalt ribbons across the landscape. Mm-hmm. Car culture changed everything. And once you had Americans post-World War II, you've got this like economic boom. The suburbs are exploding. People are suddenly able to buy a house and provide for their family on a single income, which sounds like a fairy tale now, and cars. Now you've got families loading up in cars, and it's a giant ass novelty, and it's not just a road trip vacation. Do you remember a time in this country? It's not our time. We've just had to read about it and hear about it from parents and grandparents. The Sunday drive. Oh, yeah. That was a thing.
And in fact, in growing up, that was a thing with my parents. So I can think of many times that we would go out. Where are we going to go? Well, let's go look and see the new interstate highway that's opened up, or the new whatever. And so my parents were very big on that, doing a Sunday drive. So
now, can you imagine in today's world with traffic, road rage, and gas prices, the Sunday drive? I know people still do it, but let's not kid ourselves. It's not a thing anymore.
No.
The way that it once was, because it was such a powerful novelty. So it is it's so entrepreneurial. It's so baked into the whole myth of America and the American spirit. This idea that people went, folks have cars and they're on the road. How can I make a business out of that? Or how can I leverage that for my existing business? When you think about it that way, it's charming and entrepreneurial and creative and ballsy and all of the things that we celebrate about, mythic American culture, all of those things. But it's the other side of that same mythic, shiny entrepreneurial coin that it was also janky, bizarre, vaguely criminal, and really, really a mess, depending on which roadside zoo you pulled up to.
Well, give human beings the opportunity to be able to skirt whatever the laws are and think it's a really great idea. I mean, and do deplorable things, they'll do it.
They'll take it. Yeah,
They'll do
take
it.
And I wanted to be sure to be fair, because you're looking at this girl loves a roadside attraction. If I will go 20 miles out of my way to look at a statue of a pelican.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I am a nightmare to be in the car with, because I want to pull off everywhere and go everywhere and be ripped off 10 ways to Sunday at the Mystery Hill and the Gator Ranch and whatever you got. I can't get enough. I want it to be fair and tell you a story of a couple of really good operators like Bob Lehman, who never charged a nickel, and those animals were healthy. Their conditions were as good as they could be for, living at the Chicagoland service station. And in his house, he raised his kids with lions in the living room and a chimp for a babysitter. Yeah, in their house. Animal lover, absolutely. He researched what would be good to feed them. He mucked out stalls and cages. He absolutely had such a passion for those animals and shared them with people who came to his gas station, as opposed to using them to draw business. And there are places like that sometimes people are critical and they'll go, well, isn't that a roadside zoo? No, that's actually a rescue. That's actually a sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And if you dug a little deeper, you would see how beautifully passionate the people who work there are about the animals and their care. We have a True Weird Stuff listener. I won't say his name because I don't want to embarrass him or get him in trouble. But we have a True Weird Stuff listener who works with big cats at a sanctuary. And I love this place where he works. We've taken the kids there so many times. He would do anything for these animals. Anything. If one of them needed a kidney and he was a match, Bill would give them a kidney. Mm. The people who work with animals like this are just next level. But you do have, like the gas station we went into outside Tampa. Like, come on. These alligators do not belong here under this fluorescent light in an enclosure the size of a Tupperware storage bin. And please don't tell me that alligators are assholes and they don't deserve anything. That's not right either.
The wasps are the only ones that you can do that to. I have done TV commercials with animals. One of them was with cows. So cows live at a place called Hollywild. And so this is it's an animal preserve, and these animals live there. And then you can actually go and see them as a zoo. And they will even tell you, if you go to the zoo, they'll go, this animal has appeared in commercials for blah, 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 whatever it is. And those people are near fanatic about taking care of those animals and making sure that those animals are well cared for, despite what the situation is.
I think I worked with one of their animals. So early in my radio career, we did a TV commercial. We wrote it ourselves. What I'm about to say makes me realize why the industry might not love us as much as they could. We cast the radio station program director. We cast a chimpanzee to play that part.
I remember this.
So the folks, they come to shoot the TV commercial with the chimp, and they're big. Like when you're sitting next to one on a couch, I was surprised. I think in my mind, I was thinking capuchin. A chimp is a big, big animal. So the chimp comes, and he's wearing little britches. And I'm sitting next to him on the couch. The handler is like, let's just spend some quiet time together. Let's let you two get familiar with each other. Because the chimp and I had a kissing scene. So
that's right.
Yeah. And so the chimp is going to be in my face. And of course, our coworker is beside himself. Do not kiss that animal. What if that animal tears your face off? And there will be no amount of plastic surgery. I mean, he was like frantic. And of course, I'm a big freaking simpleton who loves animals and can't believe I get to spend my day with a Hollywood chimp. So we're sitting on the couch. I am wearing black tights, black boots, a mini skirt, and a sweater. As we're sitting next to each other on this couch, this chimp, he takes his hand and he starts down by my ankle and he runs his hand up my leg, up under my skirt. And the trainer has said to me, just, be cool, just be relaxed, let him get your vibe. So basically, in order for this chimp to perform, I have to let this boy get to second base. Or maybe is that third base? I don't even know. So I say to the handler, now the chimp's hand is up under my skirt. He's heading for home base. And so I say to the handler, I don't typically, I went to Catholic school. Like, we don't really do this on a first date. And the handler's like, oh, well, he is so bad. I forget the chimp's name. Stop that, Bongo, or whatever his name was. So we do the shoot, and the chimp he's trained. He's done a lot of TV and movies. He's very intelligent. And you know what? He was bored to tears, and you could tell. And I really thought about that later. Like, it was such a fun novelty for us. And for him, it was like, oh, cripes. Are we ever going to get... No, not another take. I'm done. I'm ready to go. And I thought a lot about that. And I have in the years since that, like, I had the privilege to work with this incredibly intelligent cousin and didn't understand at the time. I think I'd think differently about it now. If you had that opportunity, Max, would you not think differently about it now?
I may, yeah. I think so. I mean, because I was working... The one that I recall, I was working with cows, and, the cows just sort of stood there, except sometimes they'd stand there and then, we're working indoors in a sound stage, and they'd let loose. Yeah, and so then the agency and the client were trying to determine whose job it was to clean that up. And I had to stand next to them, and I had to hold them, So they're big, and they're really big animals. But that's my experience with working with
kids and animals. Yeah,
and I've worked with kids too, Sherry.
and the kids will also just let loose when they need to.
Yeah, they will.
So yeah,
I had to play.
Different.
I had to play a terrible part. I had to be a child abuser in this. It was like a public service announcement, and I had to be awful, and those kids had to cower at me.
Oh God, you're the last person that would threaten a child. Acting, genius.
Acting. There you go.
Yeah, we don't know. We're not veterinarians or animal experts. We don't know anything about nothing.
Mm-mm.
But it just does seem that you can't lump all roadside animal attractions into the same basket. That's not fair. There are some that are deplorable, and there are some that are trying so hard to provide these animals with appropriate, dignified, safe shelter.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a thing. And, people hate the government. Like I said in the episode, people are constantly bitching and moaning about the government. Oh, the government. Oh, the government. Well, when you have toothless laws like the Animal Welfare Act, that's basically like, it would be great if y'all would do this, but that's on you. What do you expect? Do you know how many laws we have like that? Where we're like, well, this would be optimal, we think, but we're going to leave it up to you. And what's the alternative? That we're going to live in some oppressive top-down police state?
You can't. That's always the conundrum in this country. So,
but that's the beauty of the American experiment.
The
beauty of the American experiment is you are going to have some asshole on the side of the road who feeds his bear root beer. But you're also going to have an incredible sanctuary that takes in animals that are losing their homes because a zoo has closed.
Mm-hmm.
We got some of all of that. And I think most people, they are good and their hearts are good, and they would not take pleasure in seeing an animal suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, I think most people do not take pleasure in animal suffering and yet are fine with people suffering in some ways. I think, there's a protective quality there's a protectiveness we feel toward animals.
Listen, look on Facebook. People go, I love my animals. I hate people. You see that all the time.
I've often said, like about our radio show, our audience would follow you to the ends of the earth and publicly flog you for hurting an animal. But if you kicked somebody's grandma, that bitch might have had it coming. Have you met her? Like there's a whole different sensibility where people are concerned. And animals, they need us to be protectors, even as they are not subordinate to us or inferior to us. They're just different.
I think that's the thing about it. I think that you do have to realize that, especially with these mammals, those orcas. Sherry, can we get back to that story? Oh my God, that was so heartbreaking. I mean, so heartbreaking. When you go back to that, you realize there is a lot more to these animals than you think. It's like I look at Mojo, the schnauzer that I have. I think he understands a whole lot more than I'll ever know about what's going on with certain situations.
I agree with you.
He also has he's very attuned to emotions. He knows when you're not doing well, and he clings to you during that time. Like, don't worry, I'm here to help. So I think that you saw that with so many of those, all the orcas and the gorillas and all of them. They are sentient, They do have feelings.
So let's talk about the orcas, because I think you're watching a very interesting power struggle and political theater performance being acted out around Seth Lawless and those orcas. So think about this, and this is just me talking. Like, I don't know nothing about know-how, nothing. Mm-hmm. But here's what I'm thinking: the French government has to say that he broke the law and he's in trouble, but they can't really do anything with that, because the last thing they want is first of all, they have to get him extradited. They have to extradite him to France, arrest him, and charge him. And then we have to have a trial. And in that trial, Seth's going to play his videos and show his photos. His defense is going to do that. And you're going to have to make the case as the French government to why these orcas are swimming alone in filthy pools and performing for a drone. And I think you're going to look bad, and you know it. So it's, you are bad for trespassing and we're going to come and get you, and then pray with everything you have that the news cycle moves on. And people forget. What do you think? I usually submit all my questions in writing beforehand, but I'm not this one. Is that something you can see somewhere, the videos that he has? Go follow Seth Lawless on Instagram. That would be the one. He posts a lot of his stuff on Instagram. And I think, let me pull it up. I'll give you his handle because of my own enthusiasm for trespassing. I've been a fan of his for many, many years. He does beautiful work. Most of his stuff is, honestly, it's, abandoned homes and mansions and that sort of thing. I think I'm seeing some of this stuff on his Instagram. So I can't remember if he's at Seth Lawless or if it's abandoned places. Do you see the name of the account? It's Seth Lawless with a blue SEPH. SEPH Lawless, like it sounds, and it's the one with the blue check. And you do follow. There's followed by Sherry Lynch. There it is. And you won't. This is not you will not regret this follow. You'll find so many cool things. He posts beautiful images. He's an incredible photographer, and he goes into all sorts of cool stuff. It's not just marine land. It's not just, although if you look at his Instagram today, there's a lot of videos of those animals. But I think that I suspect that the French government is going to, thunder on and grumble and grouse, and we're never going to see much of anything come of it. You know what I haven't heard, and maybe it's out there and I haven't found it yet. The director of the Bristol Zoological Gardens could not get to a microphone fast enough to say, no, you don't. We did not abandon those animals.
Mm-hmm.
You need to sit down and listen to facts.
Right.
I haven't found that for Marineland yet. I haven't found that. I need to look for it again. It's been a few days.
It's in France, right?
It was, it was in NT in France. Yeah. Yeah. And we have our own checkered history with marine parks in this country. Look at the boycotts and protests at SeaWorld.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these animals sometimes, we've had trainers attacked and killed in marine parks in this country. And, the animal is so bad. That's an interesting, now we should get my daughter, the philosopher Aristotle, on. That's an interesting thing to say. The animal is bad. Is the animal bad, or is the animal acting out its nature and the pressures that it's experiencing and threats from its environment?
Right.
Is the animal losing its mind because of the way that we're keeping it and treating it? That's a whole nother question for a whole nother episode. Can an animal be bad? Can an animal be good? We know that that's true for dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can a wild animal, we see dogs do extraordinary things. Can a wild animal, can we assign morality to gorillas and orcas and bears? It's an interesting question.
Oh my.
Yeah. So that's that for this episode of True Weird Stuff. Next week, we're heading down into a part of the country that was besieged by the Phantom Killer. Woo! And the unsettling thing about that is whoever that Phantom Killer was, it was definitely somebody's son and, statistically speaking, probably somebody's brother. But it's also someone who got away with murder. And it might have been somebody's husband or daddy or granddaddy.
I can't wait for this episode.
And it is. The details of it are horrifying. And speaking of automobile culture, we didn't have any such thing as a lover's lane until people got cars.
Mm.
And I want you to think about America's dark history with crime and lover's lane all the way up to the present day. I mean, Son of Sam, anyone? Right?
Mm.
Yeah. So we'll see you for that episode, The Phantom Killer. And if you're listening to this when we actually released it, you're getting close to Thanksgiving. And if you celebrate, we hope you have a fabulous, amazing holiday and that you don't get into any drunken fisticuffs with your family members. But if you do, we'd like to hear all about it.
Yeah, we would. Just for research purposes.
Yeah, just and to make and to sympathize with you. We'll take your side.
And it's therapeutic for you to release that information. You don't carry the burden of it.
So if you and your bad cousin Billy Steve Wayne get into it here at True Weird Stuff, we'd like to hear your side of events. Have a great day. We'll see you for the next episode. Thank you for listening.
And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, hit the plus button in the top right corner, and now it helps an independent podcast like ours to get discovered. And we really appreciate it if you subscribe, rate, and review True Weird Stuff.
Hit our website, trueweirdstuff.com, for show notes and photos and videos when we have it, and bonus content. Everything True Weird is waiting for you at trueweirdstuff.com.
And follow True Weird Stuff on Instagram.
True Weird Stuff is a Now Media production. Our executive producer is Anthony Garcia. The show is written and hosted by me, Sherry Lynch, along with my deeply weird director, Max Sweeten. Our equally odd producer is Carrie Bowser. Additional production by the mysterious Stephen Call. Our digital witch and social media cult leader is Heather Furr. Original graphics by Kevin Nash. Original artworks by Olivia Axlin. True Weird original music composed and performed by Jack Griffin and Zane Nash. Copyright 2025 Now Media. All rights reserved. All wrongs remembered.